Hello, hello, hello. Welcome in, everyone. So excited to have you back. Kendall, Valenzuela here. And of course, you already know what we're talking about today. We are going through Dynasty with myself and, of course, the one and only Jake Trowbridge. Jake, welcome in, because we have Dynasty Debate Club, which is such a fun title. We're going to go through all of the Dynasty rankings for the incoming rookies, but also we're going to compare them to the Fantasy Life consensus rankings, underdog rankings, all the good stuff that people need to know just a couple months before the season starts. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm ready to get into this debate club action. I was in debate club in high school, I'll have you know, and did very modestly okay at it. So hopefully I can bring some of that action to today's show.
Honestly, I was going to ask you because I was like, oh, it's a perfect segue to ask if Jake was in debate club. But then I had to remember that you went toe to toe with Pistol Pete just a couple weeks ago. So I really, Jake, should have known that you were in debate club. Like I should have already known that. My apologies.
And obviously won. I obviously won that debate, right? Nobody needs to go back and check the tape on that. That's clearly what happened. Were you a debate clubber as well?
No. But now I'm feeling a little bit left out, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should have done a little bit more debate. But no, I wasn't. But I bet you were. Do you have any trophies? Like, should we get some photos of you in debate club so we can put them up on the screen, like in post production, or no?
Not a one. I'm actually regretting bringing up my participation in it at all because it was so underwhelming.
All right, perfect. Well, we can redeem ourselves here and do debate club with ourselves for Dynasty rankings. It is now time for the Dynasty Debate Club presented by DraftKings. Again, another sick intro by our graphics and video team. Like, shout out to them because these every single week are amazing. So, all right, Jake, it's time for Dynasty Debate Club presented by DraftKings here. And like I said, just to set the stage for everyone watching, everyone listening, we're going to be going through incoming rookies and their Dynasty rankings, but we also want to compare them to our Fantasy Life consensus rankings, which is half point PPR scoring if you're curious about that. Underdog rankings, which Jake, we know with Underdog and Best Ball, like it's a lot different strategies when we're talking about drafting. Those wide receivers more specifically, if you're not familiar with Underdog, they go very quickly in those beginning rounds. So you might look at this and say, wow, on Underdog, these wide receivers are really pushed up, but that's just kind of the big difference. And it's important to know when you're drafting, Jake, on when you're drafting your Dynasty rookie guys, when you're going into redraft, they're all going to be different, but that's what's going to be fun about this debate club and where we think these guys should end up. So let's start actually with the quarterback who I know we've talked about before, Jake, but we haven't really dove into what we expect for him in 2025, and that is Jaxson Dart, new quarterback for the New York Giants. So as you can see on your screen, and I'll tell you right now, the consensus rank, again, half point PPR, QB 33, Fantasy Life Dynasty rank is QB 28. On Underdog, he's off the board at QB 29. So Jake, they're all pretty much around the same range when we're looking at some of these rankings. Projected fantasy points 162, which is again a QB 32 finish. So on the Dynasty side, it all depends, Jake. If it's a super flex league, then it's going to be a lot different. But are you kind of on board with more of the QB 28 rank from our Fantasy Life Dynasty rankings?
I think the rankings paralleling each other a little bit with Best Ball and Dynasty actually makes a lot of sense because the concept is similar, albeit one of them, of course, looking at the long-term approach, but it's all about what happens with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. And they pay these guys $15 million to come in this offseason. I think it's pretty clear now that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll just looking to get off the hot seat any way that they possibly can. This is kind of a last-ditch season for them, it seems like. So the core concept is, how soon does Jaxson Dart actually see the field in 25? I think the odds are actually decent because if the Giants start their season with a losing record, and they've got some doozy matchups here in the first 9 weeks that absolutely could lead that to be a possibility, then I think they do throw Jaxson Dart in there simply for the sort of saving face aspect of it of, hey, look, we've got this new rookie and we were just working with him at the end of last season and wasn't he coming along great? Please let us keep our jobs. I think that that's the approach that we're looking at Jaxson Dart, the sort of lens through both formats. So if and when he sees the field, I'm into it. Even in one QB leagues in Dynasty, if and when he sees the field, he's great. He's a dual threat guy. Thor Nystrom in his pre-draft profile, I have to call this out, great quote, said, when he tucks, Dart squirts upfield into the second level with surprising burst. I've never been so thrilled and grossed out reading a little snippet from one of these rookies before. But it is
Oh my
true. The dual
God.
threat aspect is so great. So I get it. I get that. Like, I'd rather have him over like a quote unquote safer quarterback in best ball, certainly. So
Yeah.
does that reach out to you and say, hey, I want the guy who has dual threat capabilities at least?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at it, I agree with you on all points for Dynasty. And again, it's going to be way different if you're in a super flex league because of course those quarterbacks like him and Cam Ward, they're going to be pushed up the board a little bit more. But when we're looking at it overall for Jaxson Dart, like the Giants, Jake, have such a tough schedule coming up. They have the hardest strength of schedule of any team in the NFL. And when I first saw that, I thought, okay, Brian Daboll is already just on the hot seat. It's not even training camp yet, and we know he's got probably the hottest seat right now going into the 2025 season. Like he is going to have the best odds as the first coach to be fired. So when we're looking at it, if Russell Wilson can't stand up and can't get them wins almost immediately in those first 3 weeks, I think we see Jaxson Dart sooner rather than later because they're going to have to change and say, all right, we're not getting wins with Russell Wilson. Jameis Winston is still there and we love him for fantasy, but they're probably going to turn to Jaxson Dart and say, hopefully this is what's going to spark a fire for our Giants team to continue to get wins and to continue to hopefully, let Brian Daboll keep his job. So I agree on the dynasty front. And then, like you said, for underdog for best ball, I think Jaxson Dart is a perfect, third quarterback. With underdog, you have to be so careful, and that's where you can take three quarterbacks. You take an elite quarterback, you get the middle tier guy just in case, save it for that bye week, and then you get the guy that could potentially help you, down the stretch run. I don't think we would be shocked if it's, like I said, week 3, week 6, Jaxson Dart starting. So a third quarterback in underdog where you could also, stack him. You could do the sneaky stacks with Malik Neighbors and say, all right, I got him. I want to make sure to get some of the stacks there. I don't think he's a bad pickup at all.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out, pairing him. If you're going to do that, you might as well go all in and just say, halfway
Yeah.
through the season, this is what I'm hoping is going to happen. Let's shoot for the moon. The longevity aspect does worry me with Dart. Yeah, if he sees the field halfway through this year in a very tough schedule, as you mentioned, with a coaching change maybe on the horizon, how long does he actually last as a valuable dynasty asset? I don't know that we can say with any certainty that next year we're going to be thrilled to have Jaxson Dart on our dynasty teams. There is, of course, the idea of just like, hey, if this guy gets out there and sees the field and looks really good and delivers fantasy production while he does it, worst case scenario, I turn around, I try to trade him away and get something in return for him that was hopefully more than what you invested in the first place.
Exactly. A push and pull situation for sure. But Jaxson Dart is one, like I said, it's low cost, especially when we're looking at it at best ball. So if you're looking at that format and you're saying, why not just throw a dart at him at the end of your draft? He's going right at the end there and just say, this is my third quarterback. If it works out, then it works out. It feels like the same thing there for dynasty teams, especially if you're QB needy. This is just, Jake, not a good season to be QB needy. So I'm so sorry for all the teams that have to go through that. The next debate we have to go through here is Travis Hunter, which, Jake, depending on what platform you're looking at, depending on just what you're playing, it's all over the place. So you're going to see it on the screen here. Our Fantasy Life consensus rankings, again, half point PPR scoring, wide receiver 45. Dynasty ranking, wide receiver 16, and then he's got an underdog ADP, somewhat in the middle, but closer to our dynasty rank of wide receiver 24. So a projected 2025 finish of wide receiver 35. Where do you land with him? Is it 45 to you, or is it closer to the 16 mark?
I'm going to play both sides and go right in the middle. That's what I'm going to do with Travis Hunter, because it does make sense to me to look at Travis Hunter and say, yeah, obviously risk reward, it's massive. And we talked about this when we went through our Superflex mock draft sort of recap. With Travis Hunter, it's like, yeah, when he's out there and when he's getting the ball thrown his way, he should be a superstar for real life and for fantasy. The question is, how much risk is there in him getting shifted over to the defensive side of things? And from best ball, it's like, this is a guy who was made for best ball, because you really don't have to worry about that. On the weeks where they say, hey, we're a little light in the secondary. Maybe we use some defensive snaps with Travis Hunter mixed in there, and we cut back on the offensive snaps. You're going to have those weeks. It's still going to be frustrating, but not nearly as much so as when you have to physically set that lineup and make sure that you're picking the right week for Travis Hunter, and you're reading the tea leaves correctly with the coaches as well. Like, think about when you're setting your lineup and every little bit of coach speak that worms its way into, the projection totals for that week. It's going to be so frustrating to have to deal with in his rookie season. So for me in redraft, I'm very skeptical. In Dynasty, I'm on board. And in best ball, I'm on board, though.
It's one of those things, Jake, where I understand, and I'm going through my rankings right now as well, and that's the guy that has the biggest question mark, where I'm just like, I want to be bullish, I want to be ahead of consensus if it's going to go right. But Jake, if it doesn't go right and he does get that true split, it's one of those things where you look back and you say, oh, wide receiver, 16 to 20, that's so high to have him when he doesn't have a full workload on offense. So when I look through like the route participation rate for Hunter and what Dwayne McFarland has given him in his projections, he has him right now at 75% route participation rate. And it's not ideal. That does not give you hopes for being a wide receiver one. Of course, they still have Brian Thomas Jr. on the other side, but projected for a 20% target share, maybe being someone that could give you that wide receiver, low end wide receiver 2 upside. But the ceiling projection there, Jake, is 18.4 fantasy points per game if he's really only focused on offense. If it's a true split, you're looking at a floor projection of 9.4 fantasy points per game, which is disgusting. Like, if you drafted him wide receiver 16, wide receiver 24 overall, you're going to be so disappointed. But Jake, I want to try and be ahead of the game. And if we get news like in July and they tell us, hey, we're giving him these reps on offense, he's actually going to start the season more so as an offensive playmaker, and he's just going to get a few reps on defense, then his price is going to skyrocket. But it's a risk right now if you're drafting in May.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like a risk that is going to balloon up unless we get some concrete evidence from coaching staffs.
Yeah.
And, again, people will hear that and they'll hear a coach say that and say, how much do I actually trust the coach saying that? They say he's going to be on offense. What's to change that halfway through the season if somebody gets injured on the defensive side of things and they need to make a quick, change up? But with all that said, I look at him as like a Devontae Smith type, but with more risk baked into his snap count. So that's really scary. That is, to your point of like, we might be flying a little too close to the sun with Travis Hunter from a short-term perspective. Again, to bring it back to Dynasty though, like, just see what happens. Don't freak out yet. We know the talent is there. We know what could happen with him long-term. So I'm willing to invest, take the risk long-term, but let's not just get over our heels a little too much here in redraft.
Could you imagine, like, it's Liam Cohen's first season, new head coach. He did the cringy Duval thing, and then he comes in and he's like a public enemy #1 for fantasy football managers. Just like an Arthur Smith, we're just like, it's Liam Cohen. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about fantasy. Like, that would be so brutal.
Yeah, and he's already on such thin ice with the Duval disaster. That guy needs to really just play it straight this season and not make any big missteps here.
Exactly. Just listen to us, please, Liam Cohen. We're trying to save you here. Just give us fantasy goodness from Travis Hunter, and everyone will forget about your little Duval thing. I really promise. We'll scrub it from the internet. We promise here. Next one, Jake. Let's go over to someone that I think we're all going to be pretty in line with. But I'm curious with Omarion Hampton, running back here for the Chargers. When we look at his projections and everything, when we look at the rankings that he has, Fantasy Life consensus rank RB21 overall. Again, I'm going to continue to say it just to make sure people know that's half point PPR. Fantasy Life Dynasty ranking RB6, and then Underdog ADP right now RB15. So a little bit closer than the guys that we've talked about previously. Where are you? Let's start with Dynasty. Where are you with his Dynasty rank and where he should be going off the boards right now?
I think it's a great spot for him in Dynasty because we know the offense, we know the talent. We know that should mesh well. Those two things with Harbaugh should mesh extremely well. The only question mark that we really have, or that I really have right now, is how much of a factor is Najee Harris going to be in this first season for Hampton? And I know it's easy just to look at last year and what happened. We've got J.K. Dobbins, who's kind of the workhorse until he gets injured. And Gus Edwards wasn't really a thing. Kamani Vidal wasn't really a thing. So we can hopefully just say Omarion Hampton leapfrogs Najee Harris, and that's that. I don't think it's nearly that simple, though, because Harris is a much better football player, a much better fantasy asset, frankly, than Gus Edwards ever was. So from Dynasty, I look at that and say, whatever happens in this first year, I'll ride it out because I absolutely believe in the talent and I believe in that draft capital. Going back to, what was it, the last 10 years, I think, there have been 13 running backs drafted in round one by the NFL. 7 of those guys finished as a top 12 running back in their rookie season. 11 of them finished as a top 24 running back in their rookie season. So the precedent is there for Hampton to take advantage of it. And it honestly makes me wonder if they're a little too low in underdog. Maybe Omarion Hampton should be a little closer to that top 10 fringe, at least for best ball purposes.
Yeah, and because the dynasty makes sense. It's going to be maybe more of a gradual backfield takeover, but for dynasty, you don't care. Like you're going to get rewards, maybe not right away first year, but Najee Harris's deal is only 1 year, worth 1 year, right? So it's kind of going to be one of those things where he might be out of the picture after this season. And I don't want to doubt Najee. I still like Najee Harris, right? He's got the 1,000-yard seasons under his belt. He's never missed a game. He's just one of those guys that's always been so durable. So to me, I'm like, Najee Harris isn't going to just let Omarion Hampton come in. And I don't think Harbaugh is going to let Omarion Hampton come in and just take over right away. But if we look at it from a gradual backfield takeover and we say, at one point he gets 55% of the rushing attempts, 40% route participation, then you look at it and say, this is why I drafted Omarion Hampton at this price, because then it's like a runway for fantasy football success. And again, I don't think it happens right away, but again, it wouldn't be something where week 6, week 9, we look over Jake and we're like, oh yeah, there's Omarion Hampton and he is the RB1 in this backfield for the Chargers. So I'm with you though on underdog. I was a little bit more surprised. And I will say, like, those wide receivers, the wide receiver rush on underdog goes so quickly, right? They push wide receivers up so far. So maybe that's the other point with underdog, is that all these other wide receivers, there's such a huge cliff after, the 4th, 5th round that you look around and you say, oh shoot, I need to get, my wide receiver 3. But that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable doing that, by the way, if it means, this guy who, again, first round draft capital, and we know what the talent is and what the ceiling outcome can be for him. It just seems like, heck yeah, get him up there a round or 2 earlier. And who knows, as we go through training camp and maybe we see that Najee Harris is not actually in the best shape of his life, then maybe we do get some Hampton love kind of moving up the boards.
Maybe.
But I'm willing to invest, I think, in all 3 phases with him.
It puts him, so RB15, let me just say this on underdog, puts him in the range of James Cook, who's RB14 off the board right now. Breece Hall is RB13, and then Kyron Williams comes in at RB12. That leaves, that gives Chase Brown RB11. I don't think that's anyone that we're going to go back and forth on. Josh Jacobs is a top 10 running back, RB10 off the board as well. So something to look for there. But if you are drafting on best ball, just remember those wide receiver runs, Jake, like in my nightmares, I think about, oh, maybe I can just skip this round and get a nice elite tight end, maybe a good quarterback. And then all of a sudden you're looking around and it's like Rashid, like I love Rashid Shaheed, but it's like some of those guys that you're like, oh, yikes, I needed to get someone a little bit earlier here.
I caught you saving yourself from that Rashid Shaheed slander, by the way.
I was like, Amanda, I'm so sorry. We love Rashid Shaheed. I don't know why he was the first. I was trying to say Marquez Valdez-Scantling, but then Rashid Shaheed came up and I was like, yikes. Amanda, don't worry. We're just saying we don't want him as our wide receiver 1. That's all we're saying here. All right, Jake, that was the Dynasty Debate Club presented by DraftKings. All right, basketball fans, the NBA Finals are here. The stakes are sky high, and every shot could be the difference between glory and heartbreak. There's still time to get in on the action with my partners at DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll take home $300 in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. All right, Jake, getting into more debates here for Dynasty. Again, we're going through Dynasty rankings, Fantasy Life consensus rankings, underdog rankings, Jake, all the rankings that we can find. We're talking about these rookies coming up here and how different they can be depending on where you're looking. So let's go over to the tight ends. And let's start with the guy that was first off the board in the NFL draft. And it was not Tyler Warren. It was Colston Loveland, who landed with the Bears over there. Fantasy Life consensus ranked tight end 15, Dynasty ranked tight end 6, and then underdog ADP right now is he's coming off the board as tight end 10. So it's kind of the same question to you, Jake, where we've talked about it and we said, this could have been a better landing spot, right? You still have Cole Kmet over there. Hopefully Caleb Williams is the guy that takes a step forward and Ben Johnson is the one leading the way. But where are you with your rankings and let's start with Dynasty, like what Dynasty managers should be doing with Colston Loveland?
I actually think the Dynasty ranking is a hair too low. I put him as a top 4 guy pretty easily. There's only a couple where I'm like, all right, based on age and productivity at this point, yes, Brock Bowers, yes, Trey McBride, those 2 guys should absolutely be ahead of him. It gets to be really questionable after that. So for me, Colston Loveland is definitely worth the long-term investment in Dynasty. And it's really, I know it's easy to look at this landing spot and go, this is going to be terrible for him. I'm just going to not even pay attention. I'm going to scooch past him for another name. But just think about this. Cole Kmet has probably 1 year left with the Bears. I don't even know if he's going to be the top tight end this year. DJ Moore, I know his contract situation is much rougher for them to get out of, so he should be there. And there's a lot of question marks about the wide receivers in general with Rome Odunze. But we've got Ben Johnson there. That's what we can fall back on with Colston Loveland. We have him there. We know that his offense is historically, the 3 years of data that we have with the Lions, he operates a top 5 offense overall, top 10 offense in terms of passing. It will be there for him eventually, even if it's not this year. So I'm all in on Colston Loveland. This year, though, yeah, I'm nervous. I'm absolutely nervous because those guys are going to be there and there's no easy outs necessarily. And we're trusting that Colston Loveland does the recent rookie tight end thing of coming on right away. It wasn't that long ago, like 4 seasons ago. That wasn't the expectation for rookie tight end. So I am going to be cautious. Tight end 10 seems a little much for me, an underdog. Do you think there are very clearly, fewer than 9 guys that you would rather have over Colston Loveland, though?
That's the one thing on underdog. You just need points week in and week out, because on underdog, it is a drafted and forget it kind of team. So you don't even have to wonder like, okay, when will Colston Loveland finally get the volume that I need to put him in my starting lineup? So while I don't think there's that many better. I understand it a little bit more on underdog where people say, I need a Jonnu Smith. I need a David Njoku ahead of him because I just know that week in, week out, they're going to hopefully be peppered with targets. I mean, the Browns are a whole other thing where we just don't even know what's going to go on over there. But I understand it a little bit more over there. And I was curious with the dynasty ranking, because I was like, on one side of me, I'm like, okay, I kind of get it with tight end 6. You say, Kittle, Laporta, Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, are the 4 ahead. And then maybe, Jake, it's a Tyler Warren, maybe ahead of Colston Loveland, or maybe it's a TJ Hawkinson ahead of him. But it's one of those things where if you're patient, for me, Colston Loveland, if the Bears are the offense that everyone's expecting them to be, it's going to be one of those offenses that we want a piece of no matter what. We'll say, okay, I want to get it from a DeAndre Swift. I want to get it from a Rome Odunze, a Luther Burden, a Colston Loveland. So to me, I understand it. I understand it because people are worried kind of about the volume, right? Where he's going to be in the pecking order, what that's going to look like. But the dynasty ranking, I would put him more at, and it's not a huge jump, but maybe right at 5 there. And I understand that people want to switch up Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. And then on underdog, it's just one of those things where I think if people are getting a Colston Loveland, they're coming back and making sure that they get, a tight end, not nearly towards the end of the draft. They say, okay, let me get someone else here that's still going to present me some fantasy football value instead of just throwing a dart at someone at the end.
Yeah, I love those dart throws in best ball at the end.
Aren't they
And
the
it's not a
best?
philosophy or a strategy that's ever really worked for me, but I still love doing it, and you can't stop me from doing it. But yeah, I get the impulse to just be like, give me somebody sturdier that I actually know
Yeah.
is going to be productive, even if it's not like, oh, it's 1,000 yard season productive. I don't want a zero. I don't want to get goosed any week in underdog. So I totally get it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Like Mark Andrews is tight end 8. Okay. Evan Ingram is tight end 9. This is underdog, by the way. And then it comes in Colston Loveland, tight end 10. And then we get into like I just like Tyler Warren, Tucker Kraft, Dalton Kincaid. So it's that range where like, but let me just say, Jake, if he really does go off and if this offense is amazing and it's really going to be Colston Loveland's world and we're just living in it, though that will be I can see him outperforming his ADP there. Let me just say that. We wouldn't be shocked if that were to happen.
Yeah. And shout out to Dwayne McFarland's super rookie model, by the way, has him as the fourth best
Yeah.
tight end in the history of that model. So all the pieces are there. Hopefully they can just click together this year.
You feel the same way about Tyler Warren going over to the other rookie tight end. Again, it wasn't the best, Jake, when we say, hey, look at this landing spot. It was like the worst kept secret in the NFL, too, that he was going to be drafted by the Indianapolis Colts here. But you can see Fantasy Life consensus ranked tight end 16, Dynasty ranked tight end 7. So just one after Colston Loveland. Underdog ADP, we just mentioned it, tight end 11. Does it feel like the kind of same outcome for you there? Or are you a little bit more nervous about Anthony Richardson, potentially Daniel Jones there as his quarterback?
Kendall, ask me how I feel about drafting a Colts tight end in general. Just ask me.
Jake, how do you feel about drafting a Colts tight end overall?
Stupid, and I hate it. I don't ever want to draft a Colts tight end if I can possibly reasonably say no. And in this case, like, yeah, the Anthony Richardson of it all, that's one concern, of course. But like, even if they switch him out halfway through and Daniel Jones comes in, or whoever the third string quarterback is, whoever the rookie was that was drafted, I don't even remember the fella's name. But I'm not confident any of them are going to make Tyler Warren in year one, certainly, like a high powered or even reasonable fantasy start in most weeks. It's been, I think I mentioned this a few shows ago, but like it's been since the days of Jack Doyle that you could go set it and forget it, plug in Colts tight end. I will say, I happened to see this morning, Jonathan Taylor actually did comp Tyler Warren to Jack Doyle. He said, and I
Oh
quote, I want to
boy.
make sure I get this right. If you want a tight end like Jack Doyle, that's the one. He's the guy. So long term, sure. He is definitely the most draft capital that they've ever put behind a tight end over in Indianapolis, or at least for a very long time. So I'm willing to let that play out. The dynasty rank makes sense. The underdog ADP,
Yeah.
I'm staying so far away from that. I
Mm.
just can't get myself there.
I go back and forth, Jake, and I'm not trying to be dramatic. Like every single week looking at him, I'm just like, this could either break our hearts and or it could make it could make all fantasy managers so happy. Like it's one or the other, and it feels like it's not going to be in between because we can see a top 10 finish for him and just say Anthony Richardson, his completion percentage got way better. He's a better passer. It's just one of those things where now finally we've seen a better Anthony Richardson. And if that happens, Jake, that means that, it's probably also going to be helpful to have Tyler Warren out there. Like he is going to be a security blanket, a solid tight end, because we know that, his profile, his athleticism, just his overall talent is so good. And it's not to say that it reminds me of Brock Bowers, but it was the same conversation of, oh, yuck. Brock Bowers went to the Las Vegas Raiders, but he was just so good with, the quarterbacks that they shuffled through there, AOC, Gardner Minshew, and he was still able to have this huge productive season overall. So that's the one part of me where I'm just like, man, Tyler Warren is so talented that why could that not be him? Not tight end 1 overall finish. We're not going to go that far, Jake, but that's the thing that makes me nervous every single week is I'm like, okay, if Anthony Richardson really does show us that he has improved, especially as a passer, like that means Tyler Warren could probably outperform that ADP.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I'm probably again just letting too much of this past Colts bias in my periphery, and I shouldn't be doing that. From a redraft perspective, tight end 16 makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
but is it one of those things of, hey, I'm going to draft this guy, I'm not expecting him to come on hard at the beginning of the season, so it's a wait and see approach. But is he going to be a guy that I draft and then have to wait week after week of like, is this the time I actually drop him? No, is it next week? Is that the time that I actually drop him? Like, when do you say enough is enough with a guy like this? And that's the thing that makes me really nervous from a redraft perspective. Hopefully it would be like a Brock Bowers-esque, quick ascension, and then you just got yourself a freaking steal from this draft at tight end 16. And that's the hope. But yeah, you're more confident in him certainly than I am.
It's just one of like in redraft 2, I'm with you, because tight end 16, you're just saying, okay, like that's such a range where you can still, you get your elite wide receivers, you get a really solid quarterback at the top. You could probably get, you could anchor it with a good running back, and then you come back and say, oh, okay, now it's time for me to draft a tight end, right? And there's Colston Loveland on the board, there's Tyler Warren on the board. Like that puts him in the same range as Hunter Henry, Kyle Pitts, Isaiah Likely, Pat Freiermuth in our consensus rankings. So you're not spending enough, like too much, where you're just like, oh, I have to get this guy in my lineup every single week because I just spent such a high draft capital on him that I just need to do it. And at that point, if it doesn't work out, you could look around and pick someone up off the waiver wire, right? Bhayshul Tuten. Let's go to Bhayshul Tuten, running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, because Jake, it feels like with Tuten, it's either, he's going to be a superstar and it's actually going to be right away, or it's the other side where it's like, he's fine, but you still have Travis Etienne there. You still have Tank Bigsby. So how the heck is he supposed to, flourish there? So consensus rank at Fantasy Life, RB49. Same with the Dynasty rank, RB49 as well. And then Underdog is just a little bit higher on him at RB37. Where are you at with Bhayshul Tuten and just overall Dynasty? We'll start there. Just his overall outlook for Dynasty managers.
I don't think there's a rookie from this draft class that I go back and forth on more than Bhayshul Tuten. It is just that Michael Scott snip, snap gift, because every day I'm like, no, I can see it. I can see the path here. He's incredibly explosive. He's a big play guy. He's so fast, but he is undersized. And he is kind of buried in that backfield right now behind Travis Etienne and behind Tank Bigsby. I like Tank Bigsby. I think most people are kind of lukewarm on Travis Etienne at this point. And they should just do the nice thing and trade him to another team and make this easy on us, of course. I hear the Bears could use another running back. But I think with Bhayshul Tuten, the underdog ADP makes most sense out of this. Like the Dynasty rank, sure. I can see myself going 10 to 15 spots higher, maybe even a few spots lower, though. Like I am all over the board with him in Dynasty. With Underdog, though, because he is that big play guy, he doesn't need to see, 60% of the snaps to be relevant for you or to be even great for you. So take those games where he busts off some big runs because he can do it. He can break the tackles on his way to some massive touchdown upside. So I'm invested there. Yeah, Dynasty is just like, ask me again tomorrow. I'm probably going to have an entirely different outlook on this guy.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Which is what you want for Dynasty, right?
Exactly. That's the push, pull, snip, snap, back and forth that you want to talk about here. Because for Dynasty, again, it just depends. And this is it's just an annoying way to say it, but it just depends on your team build. If you're able to wait on a running back and not need production right away, I really actually still do like Bhayshul Tuten overall, because there is something there where we say, okay, Travis Etienne is not good anymore. Tank Bigsby, maybe he goes in and becomes a 1A, 1B situation if they really are going to go that way for this team. So that's the only thing with Bhayshul Tuten for me, is that we know that Jacksonville wants this huge, big run play, big playability. And they showed that in the draft. They're like, hey, we're going to get our guys no matter what. And that's what Bhayshul Tuten brings to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's got that big playability, but you're never going to know when to start him. In redraft, it's going to be really hard. And then same thing when we're talking Dynasty. But if you're over there on Underdog and you're saying, now you're getting into the third, maybe fourth running backs on your team, that you can just pick him up. You can say, all right, I'll take Bhayshul Tuten I think that puts him in the 10th round as your third running back, because then again, you don't need to set him up. Whenever he has those big weeks, he's going to give it to you. But I think overall, the next couple years, it'll be a really interesting conversation, Jake, especially if he gets more involved as the season goes on this year, to where he's going to be in Dynasty ranks for 2026 plus.
It's a great call out. And even talking about the big plays or the big games that he does have from a dynasty perspective, one little tidbit of strategy is like, hey, if you do have him or you want to trade, I don't know, trade low or trade reasonable for him now, wait until that first massive pop off game or big run that he does have, and then maybe turn around and flip him if you're not, so confident in him that he will be the guy for years to come. And obviously mileage is going to vary on that, and we have to wait for so many other variables to pop off. But that is a strategic bit that you could employ.
Let me just say this too to finish this off. For Bhayshul Tuten, if we do get word, right, if we hear that it's a committee and maybe he's going to be the lead in the committee, his ceiling projection from Dwayne McFarland jumps to 17.4 points per game. His ceiling projection without that is 11.8. So it's not great without the committee approach and getting word that he's going to be involved in that committee. Floor projection 5.3 fantasy points per game. You're never gonna want to start him, and then when he does pop off, you're gonna be like, oh, is he gonna be able to do it again? But if we do get word that it's more of a committee, the floor projection, the median projection, the ceiling projection is a lot better for Bhayshul Tuten overall. All right, Jake, before we continue on with our Dynasty Debate Club, which I love debating with you. I can see how you were in it in high school. I really love this. We're going to hear from our friends over at Bud Light.
Check out the new whip.
Tight.
Fully custom.
How many Bud Lights can you fit in that puppy?
As many Bud Lights as it takes.
It's a lot of Bud Lights. You have to give me one of those.
Continuing on Dynasty Debate here, going with Jake Trowbridge through some of these rookies and what we're seeing with them in our Fantasy Life consensus rankings, our Dynasty rankings, and then, of course, over there on Underdog. Let's go through Luther Burden, another Bear, because, they just said, no, we're not going to stop it. We're not going to stop there at Colston Loveland. We're going to also go out and get Luther Burden here for Caleb Williams, who Jake, by the way, he has so many weapons that if he is bad, it feels like if he's bad this year, Caleb Williams is going to burn a lot of people, and maybe potentially like Luther Burden fantasy managers. Fantasy Life consensus rank wide receiver 59, Dynasty rank wide receiver 38, and then truly in the middle, you've got an Underdog ADP. He's going off the board, wide receiver 49. His projected fantasy points is 114.7, which puts him right at a wide receiver 59 finish. So who are you closer to? Is it the Dynasty rank? Is it our Fantasy Life consensus rank? Where are you at with him?
I fall closer to the consensus rank all around. Like, just copy and paste that all the way down, because I don't know. I don't know what the Bears were doing, what they were thinking. And this is not just Packer bias hatred coming through here. I truly don't understand. Like, you have DJ Moore, the guy that Luther Burden was frequently comped to throughout the pre-draft process. You have DJ Moore locked up essentially through 2028, unless you can find an extremely willing trade partner to take on the massive contract and have to deal with all that headache. And then maybe they're giving up on Rome Odunze. Is that what they're saying with this draft pick? That can't be, because he was just a top 10 guy last year. Like, there's so many variables with this. What it comes back to is exactly what you said, though. This is a no excuses year for Caleb Williams. So if he delivers this year, great. He rises all tides, and him and Ben Johnson can skip off into the sunset together until next season, where we will draft these guys much higher, than we are currently. But that's a big if. We've seen quarterbacks come out and not live up to that, even with all the weapons at their disposal.
And that's the crazy thing, Jake, and why a lot of people are either going to be in or out on Burden. But he's like, for Fantasy Life in our projections, he's a wide receiver 5. But then we say, but he's got wide receiver 2 upside. And then it makes you sit back and go, wait, which one is it going to be? Because I want the wide receiver 2, but I'm drafting him as a wide receiver 5. Like, it's going to be one of those things where the outcomes are just all over the place. Because when we look at, he doesn't have a full-time role in any of the projections, because you just can't do it. You've got DJ Moore, you've got Rome Odunze, you've got, we already talked about the tight ends, both of them probably still going to be involved. But if this offense is humming, and if Caleb Williams, they're giving him everything, they're going to give him as many targets as he can take for this 2025 season. So again, floor projection, 6.5 fantasy points. Yuck. Median projection is still gross, 8.7 fantasy points per game. The ceiling projection is 14.4. That's with a 66% route participation rate, and then 14% target share, 19% targets per route run, which again, Jake, it's not good. But for Dynasty, I'm kind of like, I'm a little bit more hopeful for Luther Burden. I would put him closer to our Dynasty rank with him at wide receiver 38, because if there is, if Caleb Williams, for everything that he's been thrown and for everything that they've given him this offseason, if he is able to step up, then Luther Burden will probably be someone that, while the target share isn't great now, could get better in the future. So I'm a little bit more hopeful on Luther Burden. It's your Packers bias, though. I think we have to say that.
It is.
You just can't say anything nice.
I knew it. I can't be glass half full. Not with this guy. Next guy, maybe. I will say, to your point, it does make sense if you're like, well, if Caleb Williams does amazing because Ben Johnson's there or whatever, then over the course of time, they're just going to move on from the guys who are maybe not as good as Luther Burden. Like eventually DJ Moore will fall to the background, or Rome Odunze will fall to the background, or they'll make space for all three. That is certainly possible. But yeah, I'm just being a Packers dingus about this. That's all it is.
We knew it. We had to tell our listeners, be like, hey, listen, Jake doesn't like him no matter what. They could win the Super Bowl and he'll sit here and be like, no, they're still not very good. So we just had to throw that out there. Maybe this next guy,
if they do. It was a ref issue, clearly.
Clearly, obviously, it was rigged. Jaylin Noel, wide receiver for the Houston Texans, is the next guy we're going to talk about here. And when we look at some of his rankings right now, we don't have him as we don't have a true dynasty rank for him. So maybe you and I can set the line there for him. Fantasy Life consensus rank wide receiver 84. Underdog, way different though. This is a like, what is that? 20 spot difference. Underdog ADP wide receiver 64. So 64 to 84 from our consensus rankings. Fantasy point projection 41.3. fantasy points. That's total, everyone. So that puts him at wide receiver 111. Jake, I'm more surprised. Like Underdog and some of those drafters, we know how sharp they are. We know how early they begin to draft. And sometimes they are ahead on guys where they say, hey, this is a mispriced player coming in. This is a mispriced rookie. It was Chase Brown last season where it just didn't really catch up with the NFL overall. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, there he goes. So are you closer with the Underdog ADP of wide receiver 64 than our 84 on our consensus ranks?
I am, because I think this is one of those thought exercise guys where you just have to kind of step back a little bit. And again, this is a situation, he was drafted to a team that kind of already has his comp on the roster and Christian Kirk. And it seems like there's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. Then you take a little step back and you're like, well, okay, but Christian Kirk is only on a 1-year contract. And he's not even, I've started reading reports already where it's like, it's not guaranteed that Christian Kirk isn't cut and is kind of a cap saver before the season even kicks off. And we've got Tank Dell, who may or may not play at all this year. That leaves Nico Collins and Jaden Higgins, guys who, again, are already very similar in their play style and type. So there should be room for Jaylin Noel in that only semi-hopeful projection there. It seems actually pretty plausible. So I start to look for ways of like, this is a top passing offense, potentially, if CJ Stroud can get back to his rookie season self. They're top 12 in pass attempts the last 2 years. So volume-wise, if he is even the third receiver, I think he could absolutely hit that mark, if not a little better. So if this is one of those things where Christian Kirk gets cut at some point this offseason, we're going to see that just jump through the roof then. So I think from a dynasty perspective, like, yeah, I'm not over the moon with him, but if I can get him closer to like wide receiver 50 in dynasty, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I'm more with you on the dynasty. I think Underdog, I'm not taking him at that price. That price of wide receiver 64 is a little bit too rich for me. And I'm curious once training camp comes, if, it continues, like if he continues to climb or not. But I just think, and listen, I'm someone that believes that we're going to get closer to the CJ Stroud we saw his rookie season than the one we saw last season. But that offensive line looks like it still won't be phenomenal. And they added more weapons for him, which is good, right? I mean, you can look at Higgins, you can look at Nico Collins, and you can look at Christian Kirk. So now it's one of those things where it's a little bit more crowded than we expected. I really hope that CJ Stroud does have more of a boom for 2025, but that puts Higgins more into the boom bust wide, like it puts Higgins into boom bust wide receiver 3. So that means when we look at Jaylin Noel, that's more of a wide receiver 5 type guy, maybe gives you wide receiver 4 upside. And I'm just not going to pay for that at wide receiver. Like, I don't want that at wide receiver 64, especially when I'm looking at underdog. So here's hoping. I do hope, though, that this offense, Jake, it continues to show us a boom, like from 2 years ago, not from last season. And there were injuries. There were a lot of stuff that came through with CJ Stroud. He was sacked a lot of times. So I'm hoping we get that guy for this upcoming season. But in an already crowded offense, I'd rather go get, Nico Collins Higgins than I would wait to try and hope that Jaylin Noel gets involved.
Yeah, maybe this is a guy where, like, because wide receivers go so early in underdog, if you happen to go contrarian and go heavy on running backs, tight ends, etc., then maybe you're more interested in grabbing him towards the back half of your draft.
Yeah, it puts him, where is he then? So he goes around Quentin Johnston. Ugh, yuck. Okay, give me Jaylin Noel ahead of Quentin Johnston. Jalen McMillan, which is kind of interesting because then, like, Jalen McMillan is also a guy in a crowded offense, but it's a good offense, right? I mean, Baker Mayfield was phenomenal last season. And then Hollywood Brown is wide receiver 62. Christian Kirk is actually wide receiver 61. So you could, flip-flop them. If you don't want Christian Kirk, but you do want a piece of this Texans offense, then maybe you say, I'm just going to wait and I'm going to get Jaylin Noel out of it. Yeah.
I'm probably going to have more Texans than I'm comfortable with this season in general, and he'll probably be one of them.
Listen, I'm with you though. I'm hoping that CJ Stroud, like, it can't be. Well, it could be. It could just be that, yeah, he's just not the guy that we thought. But I'm hoping it's more of the first year that we saw him. Pat Bryant, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, and our expectations for him, kind of looking if he's ranked too high, too low, or just right here when we look at the Fantasy Life consensus rank. Wide receiver 86, underdog ADP right now, wide receiver 74, and this is one where it's pretty big range there, but you're not, again, spending a ton on someone like Pat Bryant, especially when you look at the underdog ADP. So, Jake, what are your just overall expectations with Pat Bryant and the Broncos?
I'm planting a flag. On Pat Bryant. I'm allowed one super ridiculous take every offseason. I think I used it last year's on Kamani Vidal. I'm using this year's on Pat Bryant. Hopefully it will be a better outcome for this guy. But I really think with the draft capital, he does have just barely day 2 draft capital with Sean Payton, who has come out and said, like, I want a next Michael Thomas. And Pat Bryant could be my next Michael Thomas. Like, give me all the PPR points from this big-bodied dude in a pretty flimsy depth chart. Like, year 1, his only real competition, Cortland Sutton, who's, I think, just going to be on the wrong side of 30. And then we've got Devon Vele, Marvin Mims, who Sean Payton absolutely hates. Like, the path is wide open for this guy. They're already excited about, moving him everywhere on the field. And I think that, like, it makes sense to me from a dynasty, from a redraft, even from a best ball perspective, that he should be going leaps and bounds above some of these, like, uber safe kind of, you know what you're going to get. And it's just going to be enough to, like, stave off a week or two until your top tier guys can get back in your lineup. Like, that's what he is. He's like a replacement, not Pat. The other guys are like the replacement guys. Pat Bryant could be so much better than that. Michael Thomas, people, remember him? He was great. He caught all those slants. Anyways, Pat Bryant's my guy.
I like that. All right. Well, now I'm going to be on board. I can't, if you're going to do your hot, your one hot take for the season, I'm not going to go against it because I was pretty much up in the air with Pat Bryant. Like, I understand it either way, right? But if you're telling me wide receiver 74, it's just, he's at the end of your drafts, and it's someone that if you want to do a dart throw on him, I'm not going to be someone that steps back and says, oh, well, that's stupid. You should have gone for, Xavier Legette or DeAndre Hopkins, because that's the range that he goes in, Jake. It's like the names are Cedric Tillman, DeAndre Hopkins, Romeo Doubs, Xavier Legette, Wan'Dale Robinson. So yeah, if you want to throw a dart at Pat Bryant, because this offense, again, I mean, we saw it with Bo Nix, like he continued to get better every single week. And same with Sean Payton, like they were able to adapt with him. And I think I still go back and forth on where to have Bo Nix. I'm sure I'm going to do this every single week until the season starts, where to have him in the rankings. But right now he's a top 10 quarterback for our Fantasy Life consensus rankings. And so if we think that this offense is going to continue to get better, they add Pat Bryant, they add RJ Harvey, they add Evan Ingram, and then like you said, you've got Cortland Sutton. Like, yeah, sign me up. And again, you're not spending a lot, so I'm just like, it's basically free, you know?
It's free money right there. We love free money. It's the best kind.
It is the best kind. So sign us up for Pat Bryant there. All right, let's finish things off with a little Jaydon Blue, running back for the Dallas Cowboys, who waited as long as they could, Jake, to just maybe freak everyone out. I don't know what it is. This is a wide range, though. Fantasy Life consensus, RB53. On Underdog, he's off the board right now, RB41. So again, it could be one of those things where Underdog drafters, best ball bros are like, hey, Javonte Williams, what are we talking about, people? Let's get it together, because Javonte Williams hasn't been able to do it for a really long time. Why would we think he's able to do it now? Give us Jaydon Blue, who could be the RB1, for this offense by by week 1. What do you think here with Jaydon Blue?
I get the arguments against Javonte Williams because it has been a while since we've seen like primo Javonte Williams, really, after his rookie season, it feels like. However, I must beg everyone to remember that this is the Dallas Cowboys, and assuming rational coaching does not always work with the Dallas Cowboys. You and I might prefer Jaydon Blue. The Dallas Cowboys might still prefer Nick Chubb, who is yet to be signed and might end up on this roster before week 1 even starts. I think that they could look at an okay running back like Javonte Williams, as long as he hits some of these other sort of intangibles, and be like, well, we want him out there a lot. They used Ezekiel Elliott way after they should have stopped using Ezekiel Elliott. So Jaydon Blue he's also just not a guy who ever jumped off the page to me pre-draft as like, I'm going to be tracking where this guy goes, and wherever he goes, I'm going to get on board. So if Javonte Williams is, again, maybe we're talking a training camp cut or something like that, obviously you just go with the guy at the top of the depth chart. I'm not worried about Miles Sanders or anybody at that point. But as of right now, I'm cautiously optimistic, I guess. That's what I'll say.
Okay. I feel like that's fair, because you're right. When has this team ever shown us, fantasy logic over the past couple of seasons where we could look at it and be like, this looks like a committee for now, right? Javonte, you can even Miles Sanders is going to get involved, like Jaydon Blue. So with the attempts, like that's the one thing that we have to look at, and just the overall volume for all of these guys. And that's what we have to look at and say, all right, where does Jaydon Blue kind of project out? And so right now it's like low end. What like low end RB3 with the range of outcomes? His ceiling projection is not great, Jake, though. 12.1 points per game. The floor projection 5.5, the median projection 7.3. So all of those are just like not great, just kind of gross.
Yeah, maybe just look elsewhere for your running backs. Don't bother with this particular backfield unless you're ultra confident in a guy. But yeah, I'd be looking at a different team.
We're going to have to do a whole other show if Javonte Williams, goes off, and we're going to have to be like a whole Javonte Williams, like apology episode. I feel like that's going to have to happen, right? Yeah.
I'll pre-write the apology now, and then I will just mail it to him. I don't think we have to bother with an entire episode. I'll just get it right to the source.
No poem or anything? A poem by Jake saying sorry, Javonte Williams. I think we could be ready for that, maybe, potentially.
Right. We'll
maybe
see.
Javonte, just don't do that to us, please. We're not drafting you, so please don't do that. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us today. As always, you already know though where to go. FantasyLife.com. That's where you can go and check out all of the projections that we were talking about. All of our articles 100% free, and same with that newsletter in your inbox 7 days a week. For Jake Trowbridge, Kendall, Valenzuela, appreciate you guys. We'll see you here next time.